What's up, YouTube? Zachary Michaels here. I'm an actor, and this is An Actor Reacts. Today we'll be talking about episode 4 of We Are Who We Are. Let's discuss. Before we get started, if you're new to my channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button, give this video a thumbs up, and leave a comment below. Episode 4 of We Are Who We Are is titled Right Here, Right Now, number 4. With Craig's deployment fast-tracked, he spontaneously proposes to his Italian girlfriend, Valentina, and determined to ship him off as a celebration he'll never forget, his friends pool their resources for a Hawaiian-themed wedding. Okay, episode 4. I have mixed feelings about this episode because on one hand, I really enjoyed watching it. Like, it was really fun to watch and kind of like, it was like kind of real thrilling episode. But on the other hand, like, there was no real development on anything that we've established so far. Like, the plot took a halt, no real character development. So on that aspect, I was like, I don't know. So this episode's kind of a mixed bag for me, but let's get into my recap. So this episode starts off with the group in the woods, and they're playing this like paintball capture the flag type thing. And now I've never actually played paintball, even though I wanted to for a while, but this made me want to do it even more because it just looks so much fun, how like the whole game that they were doing. But anyway, Fraser is like laying in the woods in Fraser fashion, not taking the thing seriously at all, just like chilling, looking like he's like just waiting for the game to be over so he can go do Fraser stuff. But Danny and Sam spot him and they like target him because they both do not like him, maybe even like hate him. But they come and they're creeping up on him, and then they call him out and he like surrenders immediately, but they don't care because again they hate him, and they just start emptying the clip on him. Like, they literally run out of ammo, just like shooting him up, and they're like, aim for the face, aim for the face, even though he had a mask on. Like, I've heard that paintballs hurt, so I'm sure that hurt like hell. Probably both for Fraser and for Jack, because from what I've seen or heard about the show, they don't like fake it. Like, all the fight scenes and stuff are like not choreographed, they just kind of go for it. So I'm guessing they probably had real paintballs and were shooting him, so maybe that part isn't as fun, but like, hey, he still got paid at the end of the day. But so they emptied the clip on Fraser, I'm sure, again hurting him a lot. And then Brittany comes and kind of like breaks it up, and she's like, shoot me. And they like, whatever, and they just like go off. But poor Fraser, poor Jack. But then we go on to the capture the flag portion of it, and Caitlin is like grabs the flag from, I guess, Craig's side. I don't know what the teams were in this, because Fraser and Caitlin were probably on a team, but then it seemed like Craig was on the team against Caitlin, and then so that would mean that it was Caitlin, Fraser, and Brittany on a team, but Brittany seemed to be in cahoots with Sam and Dan. I don't know. Anyway, that's completely unimportant and adds nothing to the value of the episode. But anyway, Caitlin goes and captures the flag, and Sam sees her, has a shot, but he doesn't take it, and Caitlin gets to run off with the flag, and I guess they win because then we cut to the next scene, and they're having like this epic paint throwing scene, I guess. It's just like they're having a good, now this scene looks like it was so fun to film. They're literally just throwing around paint, screaming, having a good time, throwing like the vests at each other, just hooping and hollering, I guess. And there's this score that goes on through that scene, which is just so freaking epic. It's like just like, it's like what I've been saying about this score. It amps you up. It's like real like big and theatrical and like almost like going off to war, which is like a good theme for this episode because that's kind of what it's around. But anyway, that scene looked so fun to film. Another one like that, I would be like, oh, you just get to let loose and have a good time. That's really this whole episode. These characters and the actors really just getting to let loose and have a good time. Then after that next scene, we go on to the group is like on the bus, and it was this really sweet moment of them passing around these chips. It was really subtle, but it was just really fun to see. Just like, Brittany starts it off. Her and Enrique are eating the chips. She passes it to Caitlin. Caitlin eats a few. Caitlin passes it to Fraser. Fraser eats a few, passes it to Danny. Then Danny eats a few, passes it to Sam. And then Sam attempts to pass it to Craig. Craig denies, and we'll get into that in a second. But it was just really cool to see this kind of like communal moment between them all, and kind of seeing Fraser included in that. Because, last episode they all hated his guts, and they don't quite love him this episode, but he is kind of, becoming a part of their regular day-to-day group. And it was just really cool to see like a nice simple moment like that portrayed on screen. But now let's get into Craig. Now this episode is not really plot driven at all. It's more so not even really character development driven. It's just more about like these characters in a situation and how they behave in it. Just more so getting to know them, not necessarily developing plot nor them going on like a character journey. But so because of that, it's going to be hard to kind of go through the plot of the episode. So I'm just going to go by character to character. And we're going to start off with Craig, because he is kind of the leading force of this episode. So back to the chips. Once they pass them around, Sam has them, and he attempts to pass the chips to Craig, and Craig just kind of like brushes them off, like he's got more important stuff going on right now. And we see that he and Valentina are really sad. They have this really sad aura around them, and we learn that's because Craig is being shipped off to war. Like they brought up in the last episode, the men are being sent off early. Even though they're not necessarily prepared, they're going to be going off to war very soon, the end of this episode, actually. And Craig and Val are having a hard time coping with that in their relationship. And then he proposes to her. Kind of a spur of the moment, like, it gave me real, like, frantic energy. He presented it very calmly, but, like, I'm thinking it's very, like, he doesn't know what to do. He's scared. This is just like something to do to, try to bring some normalcy, I guess. But he proposes and she accepts. And then he's like, guys, I proposed. She said yes. We're getting married. They do it that same day. This is his last day in town on the base before he's sent off. And for the most part, the group is happy for them. Danny's happy for his friend. Caitlin's like interested. She's like surprised but interested. Sam is the only one who seems a little angry about it, and I'll get into that in his section. But for the most part, the group is behind it. They pool all their money together, and they start going shopping for a suit for Craig and a dress for Val. Oh, and we also learned that Val is Enrique's sister, which kind of confuses me on like the how old are they? Because I'm guessing Craig is like 18, maybe that's why he's able to be such close friends with Danny and the rest of the kids, because he's, just became an adult himself. But Craig is 18, I'm guessing. So how old is Val? Because she was talking about like her being grounded by her parents if they found out. So I'm guessing she's under 18, but she's getting married to Craig. But even if she is 18, she could still, I guess, be grounded by her parents because she, I'm guessing, is living with them. But then how old is Enrique? Because I'm guessing Enrique is older than her, and Enrique is like dating Brittany, kind of. It just, I don't know. The ages, I'm like, I feel a little iffy about. Like, I don't know how old people really are. But anyway, back to the storyline. They're getting married. The group goes, pulls their money to go find the suit and stuff. They this whole thing during the shopping isn't necessarily too important, but they get the stuff. Val does kind of say to her friend like, I wonder, does he really love me, or if if this is just a spur of the moment thing to do. And I think he has love for her, but I don't think he's in love with her. I don't think this marriage would last under normal circumstances. I honestly don't even know if it'll last in this show. Because I think he's just scared, like he's going off to war, and we already know that the men aren't ready. So it's like there's a, good chance that bad things will happen. But anyway, they decide on a Hawaiian themed wedding, and they go off and they get married in the chapel, and then they go off to have like the reception, I guess, the bridal party and stuff. They drive off and go and break into this like Russian villa with no Russians, which is kind of like a fantasy of mine. Like I since I was a kid, I've dreamt of like going off to like an abandoned house and just living there with like friends and stuff and just having a good time. Like, so that was like a fantasy of mine that I kind of got to live through in this episode. And then I just love like that the spirit that they had in that. Like that's like I love kickbacks with my friends. This episode really was that, them like getting drunk and just having a good time. Like they break into the villa and it's just it's a party. Like they immediately go in and they're like jumping into to the pool like with their clothes on, most of them except Fraser, of course. They're just they do they cook spaghetti, have poolside, eat that at the poolside with no plates or anything, just everyone digging their hands into, which now that was not part of my fantasy. Like that actually kind of grossed me out. Like if I was there like in real life, I wouldn't have eaten that spaghetti because everybody's nasty germs and stuff are in it. That is something that I can say about them. They are all very close. Because I don't think I'm close enough with anyone, like not even my family, that I would be as like they all exchange bodily fluids so much throughout this episode. I could do it as an actor. I would still be kind of disgusted, but that's the job. But like if this were me in real life, I would feel very grossed out from actually a lot of the stuff that happens in this episode. I feel like I would be very uncomfortable. Actually, funny enough, I have kind of been in a situation with some of the stuff that has happened in this episode. Just like kind of the what happens when a bunch of people are drunk and young people in like this in like a secluded place alone with no supervision, and like some of the shenanigans that can go on when a bunch of young people are drunk. We'll just leave it at that. But it's just I'm very like introverted and kind of I'm very I like things a certain way, and they were just kind of all over the place this episode. But it was fun to live vicariously through them and just watching the episode. But they're just having a good time. They're getting drunk. They're smoking. Like I said, the poolside spaghetti. Like they do like a spin the bottle with kind of stories at one point. They're like they find tennis rackets and they're just playing. It's just like a really fun like last hurrah for Craig. They dance and just have a good time. Like funny, the music. I forgot that this is like I said this is like 2016 because like when I was hearing some of the songs, like Panda was in there, Nike's Frank Ocean. I was like, these songs are really old. Why are they playing? And then I was, oh yeah, this is taking place 2015, 2016. So these songs are like brand new at the time. But that's basically the gist of that. They just have a really fun time. They're kissing on each other. They're naked running around. They're having sex. Just everybody's having a good time and just kind of being free and drunk. And like, is this what life is like on an army base for the kids? Because if it is, like, Okay, maybe it's not that bad being an army brat. Like, sure, you got to move around, but if it's like this on every base that you go to, like, you could have signed me up as a kid, even though, again, I'm kind of, I would have probably been repulsed at the time, but whatever. But it's probably honestly not like this. This is a TV show, so they probably amped it up. But it definitely, I feel like this episode and that party, and it was really able to capture that, like, the essence of youth and just freedom and just letting out and having a good time. It definitely did an amazing job of that. So shout out to Luca and the cast and all the other creatives involved in this episode, because they were really able to capture something really special. Let's see, do it anything else in the party? Oh, we do kind of see Craig, back to him because this is his thing. We kind of see him kind of trying to not mend fences, but seeing Craig is kind of the peacemaker in this show. He's like the rational one to everyone's craziness, even though, like, he made the crazy decision this episode that kind of sparked everything. But we see him kind of caring for Danny at the party, like, you're gonna dance. This is my wedding, and you're gonna do what I say. Just trying to lift his spirits up and invigorate him, because Danny is really going through it, especially now that his best friend is going to be going off to war. We see him trying to lighten Danny out this episode. And the same thing with Caitlyn as well. We see a nice moment between them. And the moment comes back up. Caitlyn brings it up earlier in the episode when they were playing paintball about how he didn't shoot her. And she thinks it's because, he didn't shoot her because he's a girl. He says he didn't have a clear shot, even though he clearly did. But when she brings up that it's because she's a girl, he pushes that off. And I don't think it's that. I think that's just Caitlyn internalizing that, because again, she's going through stuff with her identity, and I don't think she likes to be uh, identified as a girl, or at least she doesn't like to be treated a certain way because she's a girl. But I don't think it was because of that. I think he didn't shoot her because, one, going back to, I think Craig is just really scared to go off to war. And he's not ready, as are none of the other men. But he, I think, didn't shoot her because he loves her. And even though it's paintball, even though it's just a game, it's about to become real for him the next day. And I don't think he wants to shoot somebody that he loves. He cares about her too much, and he's going to be shooting a lot of people in the near future. So I think there was that kind of, like, moment that he had, like, I can't do this. And just, again, him being scared and not fully being confident in his ability overseas. So there was that. And then anything else? No, that's about the end of Craig's journey through the episode. Towards the end, we see him kind of sneak off with Val, and they go to have, to consummate their marriage and have sex. And then the next morning, Craig wakes up and everyone else is asleep, and he gets dressed and he leaves them all without saying goodbye. And he, at the end of the episode, we see him, like, being sworn in as a soldier and about to go off to war. And honestly, this episode gives me feelings that Craig is not going to make it. I don't know if he's going to die. I feel like it's going to be death, but I feel like he's at least going to be severely injured, and maybe we won't know what happens to him, or maybe he'll be, handicapped. I don't know, but something not good is going to happen to Craig. I get that feeling because, one, we haven't focused on Craig a lot in this series. He's just kind of been the supportive friend, the supportive brother, and just kind of, been the level-headed one, like I said. But now we're randomly getting an episode completely focused on Craig and him getting married, and, like, that's the main plot of the story. Anytime that happens in shows, when, like, a kind of side character gets the main focus, It's like it's never anything good coming from that. Plus, he's going off to war. And like I said in that last episode, they mentioned how the men are not ready. They need their full 90 days. But the commander says, Sarah, that, we don't have 90 days. We got to ship them off now. So it just gives me that, like, feeling in my stomach that, like, Craig is not going to make it. And unfortunately, he's the one that, no, he's definitely the most likable character in the show. And that's what they do a lot of times. They kill off the one you like to really get you in the gut. But I don't see bright things for the Craig in the future. I think he unfortunately is gonna die, and like this episode was like a last hurrah for him, and I think that's why he didn't say goodbye to them, because I think he gets the feeling that he's gonna die as well, and he wants his friends and his family, like they're all his family. Sam's actually his family, but like the rest of them are, family that he chooses. And I think that he knew that his time was coming, so he wanted them to remember him and like how happy and bright he was and just free spirited and having fun that night before he goes off to what I think is the end of his life, unfortunately. But that's Craig's story this episode. Now we'll get into the couple of the others. Again, that was like the main driving force of the episode, but there are a few things I want to touch on for the other characters. Then we'll get into Danny. This episode, we really got to touch on Danny and Craig's relationship. Like right after that paintball scene, there's these shots of just Danny and Craig just kind of looking into each other's eyes, and they're not saying anything, but it's just they have this really deep connection. And I know last episode I was kind of saying that how Danny needs someone in his life that he can express those feelings to, because Craig isn't the one. But I think Craig is the one. Maybe not to express it in the way that Danny needs to, and not Danny's not able to. He like Craig isn't the one to give him feedback in the most healthy way, but that's kind of the way that their relationship works. They're tough on each other because that's the way they communicate. But you can tell they have a real deep love for each other, especially Danny to Craig. He really looks up to him. And they had that scene with just their eyes, and they didn't need to say words, and it was just they can definitely communicate it with each other. And then they kind of joke it off with like, yeah, I hope you do better over there than how you did in paintball today, which again I think he didn't do very well because he was just scared. He doesn't want to hurt these people that he loves. And then Craig kind of jokes back, I just hope you find somebody to look at that cute ass while I'm gone, which is funny, just a nice little light moment. And I worry for Danny because he loves Craig so much, and Craig's really the only person that he felt comfortable to express those feelings to about like him feeling suicidal. That now that Craig's gone, and if I'm right about Craig dying, I just see Danny going down a really, really dark path. And I don't know. I hope for better, but I if this is it's realistic again, this show, and that's real. He already feels secluded. Now the only person he was able to open up to is leaving and may potentially die. I don't see that going well for Danny, but hopefully the group can kind of surround and support him if that does happen. But I really loved their connection, and like there was that little moment at the wedding where Danny's looking at the cross, and we just get that other inkling of Danny's relationship with Islam and like his struggle with that. And we do see more of that this episode. I think with that pressure of Craig leaving, he's also kind of now like unsure about how he was connecting with Islam, or not even unsure. I think he was just like Caitlin mentions that if it's for Craig, Danny will do anything, and Danny kind of looks to him as kind of a god almost. So we see in this episode to kind of celebrate Craig and kind of in mourning of him, he kind of drops some of those not temples of Islam, but like some of those like core beliefs of Islam. Like Danny doesn't drink, but we saw him, he starts drinking in this episode, and like everyone's questioning it. Sam questions it, and Fraser questions it, and that's when Caitlin says the thing about her looking at Craig as a god, and if it's for Craig, he's gonna do anything. And he just kind of lets that loose. He's drinking, and he ends up having sex in this episode. I don't know if that was his first time or anything, but I know Muslims aren't supposed to have sex before marriage. They don't drink, and Danny's doing all those things in this episode and kind of dropping all of those things for Craig. So that's kind of another thing that I'm curious about. Like, if Craig does die, and now Danny's already struggling with his religion, how's he gonna feel that he kind of went against his religious beliefs, and just another thing that he's going to be grappling with. Danny is such a complicated character, but really interesting to me. Um, let's see, anything else? Oh, and I already mentioned him having sex and drinking, and that kind of comes from Valentina's friends. What are their names? Monica and Loredana, I think that's how you pronounce it, Loredana, something like that. They come and they're interested in him, and at first I thought he was gonna get like a three-way action. He kind of gets dancing with the two of them, and that's when he starts the drinking. But initially he's kind of pushing them off when they're trying to pull down his underwear. But then I think when Craig kind of tries to loosen him up later in the episode, and it's like, you're gonna dance, it's my wedding, you're gonna dance what I say who, I think that kind of really opened him up. And then we see him having sex with one of them later and getting drunk and everything. So just Danny, we saw him this episode really just kind of challenging all the things he believes for like the person that he believes in, and that's Craig. And he's, again, just willing to do anything for Craig. And I think if Craig dies, like I think he's going to, that's gonna hurt Danny a lot. And that's all I got on Danny, though. Now Sam is one who was initially angry about the wedding, and I'm not 100% sure why, but I do have some thoughts on it. I think it may just be because, interesting. I mentioned like Craig being the peacekeeper and like really caring for and trying to balance out Caitlin and Danny, but we don't really get to see those moments with him and Sam and their actual brothers. Not that I think they have a strained relationship or anything. I just think it's interesting that we see Craig caring for Danny and Caitlin more than we do for his actual brother. And that might just be an oversight of the show. Like, maybe they just want to show like how these main characters are impacted by it. But I just thought that's something interesting, and I don't think it's an oversight because I think this show is very intentional in everything it does. So I think with Sam getting angry about um, Craig getting married, I think that's some resentment of him like losing all the people that he loves, and no one really loving him back in that same way. Like, there's, he and Caitlyn just broke up, and now she didn't seem to care at all, and she's kind of seemingly dating Fraser now. And his brother, he knows that his brother loves him, but his brother seems more consumed with other people like Danny and Caitlyn, and now his brother is getting married, and that's taking him away from him even more. Plus, he's going off to war. Like, I actually ended up liking Sam a lot more this episode and just kind of feeling bad for him than I did in any of the previous, because I kind of started to see things from his side a little more. And he was kind of funny this episode, in my opinion. But he's really angry at this marriage, because I think he's actually the one looking at it from a logical standpoint too. Like, he knows that this isn't the right choice. Plus, again, it's kind of taking his brother away from him in another way. But he does seem to kind of warm up to it throughout the episode, even though that might just be him just having a good time at this, like, at the reception. But Sam gets really, really drunk at the party, and we see him kind of like in that drunken state where you can't really do much, and he just kind of lands in the bathroom. And actually, Fraser goes in there and kind of starts taking care of him, kind of taking care of him, because he's like feeding him coffee to kind of sober him up some, but he's also like making him chug this super hot coffee, and he's kind of getting a kick out of that. But in the end, I think it does kind of help him sober up, even though he ends up throwing up, but getting the liquor out of his system. Um, but they have this really good moment in the bathroom where they come to this kind of understanding that, or at least that Sam does not like Fraser, never will like Fraser. But they come to an like, okay, like that's just how we're gonna go forward. And I really thought Sam was funny this episode, especially in this scene, like when he's like, you think you're something because you know poetry. I know poetry too. And then he starts rapping "We Gonna Be Alright" by Kendrick. Like, I thought that was hilarious. And another throwback to like the "This Is 2016." So "To Pimp a Butterfly" just came out like the year before. So him rapping that works really well. So I thought that was just funny, like the drunken delivery. And like that's what he does as poetry, even though Kendrick is a poet. But just that, I thought that was really funny. And then him just uh, Tim telling Fraser like, you know, I don't like you. I'm never gonna like you. You don't know what love is, and I do. Even though I don't think he knows what love is either. But I like seeing those two kind of connect. Not even, I guess it was a connection, but more of a like a agree to disagree. And Fraser's just like, yeah. But I liked seeing Fraser in that moment, because I like seeing those like more calm moments from him, and those moments of like us seeing that he's not this lunatic of a person, that he actually has a heart. Again, not that he's a terrible character, but like he goes off on crazy antics. So I like seeing those really smaller, genuine moments from Fraser, and I like seeing them come to that kind of understanding. Anything else? Oh, yeah, there is the big thing. The next scene, we kind of see Sam and Brittany kissing, which I had suspected was gonna come up between the two. Like, they're kissing, and I guess we can get into Brittany now too. While they're kissing, Sam is very drunk. Brittany was drinking too, but I don't think she's as drunk as everyone else. She seemed to kind of hold herself together for most of the episode. But while they're kissing, Brittany is like eyeing where Fraser and Caitlin are, and kind of seeing if they're noticing it. And that's something that I'm realized about Brittany, especially in this episode, is that she loves to be the center of attention. She like I think she does like Sam, and she likes kissing him, and she likes what that relationship could be, but I think she also just kind of wants to be seen. Like, she wants Caitlin and Fraser to see, like, oh look, like, you broke up with Sam, but like now I'm kissing him. Or like, I think that's why she is with so many of the other guys in the show, and is so flirtatious and big and outspoken, because she just likes to get people looking at her and talking about her. Or like early in the episode when they were doing the like spin the bottle stories game, she tells that story of the guy who his first deployment, something went really bad, and then he came back and tried to kill his wife, and something's wrong with him. But like, why would you tell that right now? And Danny gets rightfully pissed. That was probably the first time in the show where I was on Danny's side when he kind of blows up, because why would she tell that story? It's like she doesn't have a filter. Or I think she does have a filter, but that filter is like, what will get me the most attention? And she knew with Craig being sent off the next day, that kind of story would get her attention. So I kind of feel bad for her too, because it's like, while she does these kind of volatile things and like tries to get attention and does this and that to push people's buttons, it's like, why do you feel the need to do this? There's definitely something deeply rooted there, and insecurity with Brittany. Um, but she does have a really beautiful moment later on in the episode, which is kind of a tension, but I thought it was really, really well done from the actor. I forget her name. Francesca. There we go. Francesca Scorsese has a beautiful voice. She's playing the piano and singing a Beatles song, I think it was, and she did that. Did not know that she was that good of a singer, but shout out to her. That was another one of my favorite moments in the episode, along with like that chip passing moment and like Sam rapping Kendrick. But like Britney singing at the piano, I thought that that was really, really well done, and she has a really great voice. But yeah, I think that's all I got on Britney. She didn't have much of a plot this episode. It was more so just those few moments of her like trying to get attention on herself with like the story and the kissing Sam. Now I guess we can get into Caitlyn and Fraser. Um, and the reason I believe Caitlyn doesn't care about like the Sam and Brittany stuff, at least not as much. She didn't let on this episode, and maybe that was just to kind of not bring down Craig's party because she's someone else who loves him too, and like I mentioned before, they have a really good relationship, much better brother and sister relationship that she has with her actual brother. But I think maybe she just didn't want to bring down the mood for his party, but she like takes all that stuff that she was noticing and like files it away for later. um, but we see her kind of separating from the rest of the group and really connecting more with Fraser this episode, even with everyone else around, even with them all hanging out. She's very territorial with Fraser. Like early on in the episode when they were doing the shopping and stuff, she tells Brittany that like, maybe you're right. Maybe things are changing. Maybe things are different now, and I don't think it's ever gonna be the same. And even though she's saying that, you generally when you say stuff like that, it's because you miss the past. But I think she's saying it's never gonna be the same, and I'm okay with that. Like we see her at the wedding. She grabs Fraser's hand and they're holding hands. Now initially I was like, oh, she's just doing that because she doesn't maybe want anybody to know about that other side of her. She doesn't want anyone to know about Harper. She's just trying to put on a show so people will think that they're dating. She's trying to really amp that up. But the more we got into the episode, I started to think that no, maybe she's just like, she's laying her ground like this is mine. She doesn't want anyone else to connect with him because that's her own special that's her own special person. She's very, like I said, territorial of him. Like the character Soleil, played by Victoria Batten. Soleil seems to be really into Fraser this episode. She tells him like, you intrigue me. I like you. You're not like the other boys. And we see her early on like trying to like put this like can or jar of something in his face, and he's like swerving her, which like no boundaries. Again, there none of them have boundaries, especially like her. Like she doesn't seem to have any boundaries at all. But he swarms off just like I would have. But then later we see her coming back again, trying to dance with Fraser. But then Caitlyn like interrupts and kind of pulls Fraser away. And then she doesn't even necessarily go dance with Fraser. Caitlyn, after she pulls him away, she just doesn't want Soleil around him because Fraser is hers. And she goes back off and does her own thing. And then later, after Fraser gets out of the bathroom with Sam, she, kind of corners him in the hallway and is like, is that really your girlfriend? You two don't seem like it. And then she kisses him and he pulls away, but then gives her the most awkward kiss back, which was his first kiss, so it's okay that it was a little awkward. But he kisses her back, and it's just really, again, awkward, and like he's like a fish kissing her, kind of. But then he runs and tells Caitlyn because that's his person. That's who he has the real connection with, and he can tell her anything. And he tells her about the kiss, and she's like, well, what'd you do? And he's like, I kissed her back. And she's like, don't ever do that again. And that's what led me to believe that maybe it's not just her putting on a show to kind of make people think that Fraser's her boyfriend so they don't know about Harper, but maybe they are in a relationship in their own way. Like it's a little more than friends, but a little less than like romantic relationship where they'd be, I don't see them ever like kissing or having sex or anything like that. But they just have this kind of like Craig and Danny where it's not like I don't see a romantic thing between Craig and Danny. Like there's a lot of I can't think of an like they Craig and Danny have a lot of like sexual tension, but it's not sexual. But I can't think of another word. They just have this aura around them about their connection, and Caitlin and Fraser have that same kind of type of thing, just a little different and a little more intense. But it's not quite that relationship that you expect, but it's a little more than a friendship. So they have their very specific Caitlyn and Fraser thing, and Caitlyn does not want that interrupted by anyone else. And I think it's interesting that this episode, there's just many moments between, like, even though they're around everyone else, Caitlyn and Fraser are kind of in their own little world. So I think after this episode, Caitlyn's really going to be separating from the rest of the group, and really her and Fraser are going to become kind of their own thing. I feel like this wasn't only like the last hurrah for Craig, but this is the last hurrah for Caitlyn with that group of friends, because I think she just really wants to be her and Fraser alone. Let me see. I think that's all I got on the episode. Yeah, that's there. Kind of talked a lot, but there wasn't necessarily much plot driving this episode. Like I said, there was just these characters placed into this situation and seeing them behave within it. It was more of a character study than anything else. But yeah, that's all I got on this episode. So let's get into my final thoughts. Okay, so now this episode, like I mentioned at the beginning, was kind of a mixed bag for me because I liked this episode with how they were really able to capture this really raw and honest depiction of like teens just letting loose and having fun, and like I was able to like live vicariously through the episode and just have a good time with them, and it was fun episode to watch. But I feel like this episode, I've mentioned how this episode balances like indie film and TV show really well. This episode didn't balance it as well. This one really leaned into like indie film, because this episode I feel like you could have taken it out and kind of tweaked a few things and added in maybe another 30 minutes to an hour and made a really good film. Like this was a good standalone episode, but this episode felt like it kind of halted all the progress that the third episode had made as far as like character development and plot. Like there were so many things that were set up in that third episode, like the two moms, like Maggie and Jenny, like what was going to go on with their relationship, or Richard and Caitlin and their situation, and Fraser finding out about his mom kind of dancing and flirting with I forget the good dudes, with Jonathan. All that just kind of went away, and then we kind of went into this standalone thing. And I really just kind of wanted what was going on to continue. At this point, it's kind of every other episode it kind of like slows down. Like that first episode set up a lot, then the second episode was really slow and kind of a rehash of the first. Then the third episode set up a lot, and then this episode is kind of didn't develop any of that thing, any of that stuff anymore. So it's tough because like I want the storyline to continue and the character development, but at the same time I did enjoy it. Maybe I wish this episode could have like somehow come before that third episode, and it would have been a nice progression and we could have kept it going, because it looks like episode 5 is gonna be diving right back into the story. I just don't know how I feel about this episode kind of being in the middle. Anything else? No, I think that's how I feel about it. I'm like, on one hand I really enjoyed it, on the other hand I wish we could have continued the storylines. I'm definitely still a fan of this show, and I'm gonna be there watching all the rest of them. But hopefully we don't keep this thing up where it's like every other episode kind of strays away from the storyline and the character development and kind of just is its own thing, because we only have 4 episodes left, and I like where it's going, and I hope it continues to go there. Okay, yeah, but that's all I got on episode 4 of We Are Who We Are, right here, right now, number 4. Leave a comment below. Let me know your thoughts on this episode. Do you agree with me that it was kind of a mixed bag, or do you love this episode? Do you hate it? Let me know all that below in the comments. Don't forget to like this video, share it with your friends and family, and subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Thanks for stopping by. See y'all next time.